Hey everybody, happy Friday. I'm going to get Eric on the call here in 1 second. Let me see if that worked or not. All right, so hopefully Eric will hop on here in a second. We'll get started on our topic for this week, which is program design for adult group training. Something that we've been posting a lot about this week, and hopefully we can get him on here and get things set up here. Hey guys, if you have any comments here that you want us to answer about, specifically like adult group training, whether it's prep, whether it's actually designing, A blocks, B blocks, C blocks. Oh, there he is. Beautiful. I was just saying to some of the individuals that were popping on here, if they have any questions specifically that they want us to answer regarding adult group training, I put it in the comments and then we can go from there. So in the past week, we've done a couple different videos on some ideas that will give you some direction on how to work with adults and how to program with adults. And we also had some infographics as well. So I think one of the first things that we need to understand is that when you are working with an adult population, they are, even though they feel like they were still the same shape they were in high school and college. There are just different parts of life that they have to manage, whether it's, kids, work, stress, old injuries, you name it. So there's always stuff and there's always baggage. And when I say baggage, it doesn't mean necessarily a bad thing, but there's always just more considerations when you're working with adults than when you're working with athletes, because most of the time when you're working with athletes, guess what? Their goal is to basically get better at their sport, right? So they just don't have as much stuff to really manage in life. And that's why I think when it comes to program design for adults, we have to be really thoughtful about the way that we do. And that's what we're really going to talk about today. So before we sort of dive into the nuts and bolts, Eric, anything that you want to add in, discuss?
Well, every context is king, as we always say, a million times over in all our content, and realize there's a difference between that adult class that's the 20-somethings in a CrossFit class with the sport tops and shirts off, right? And then versus the 45 to 55-year-old crowd that may come, that's, I know, more of your demographic that you see in a lot of your classes, and so that's going to be a big factor in your decision making, right? And that's really all we talk about is how do you make better decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if there's one thing that I would say that I firmly believe in, it, what we do at our gym, we won't let anybody just hop into a class without going through their injury history, their medical history, aches and pains, taking them through some sort of evaluation. Obviously, us being guys that work for FMS, that's what we use. But really, at the beginning is how to ask the right questions and how to get more information. So one, you can give them better options within a group training program, whether it's a lateralization or a regression. You can give them what they need, or at the same time tell them what to avoid. But also, you don't want to put them in an environment where they're gonna fail, because I think the worst thing you can do as a gym owner is have someone, in just my opinion, is just have someone hop into class when you don't know a damn thing about them. And we get it all the time. Hey, can my my daughter's in town for a week, can they hop in? No, sorry, they're gonna have to do an eval first, right? And those are all the things we do. And people think that we're being a jerk or we're trying to, get more money out of people. No, we're actually doing it. So one, we're not going to put someone in a scenario where they're going to get injured, and it's really for their own safety. So you have to take the time to get to know your clients, and not necessarily in one session where you're going to get this, develop this, in-depth relationship, but you need to understand where they're coming from and what they bring to the table before you say, hey, go do exercise. We use a bunch of analogies in the course, but it's like saying to someone, hey, to get healthy, you should eat food. It's like, well, that's just very, very basic information that doesn't really get me anywhere. So like Eric said, context is king. If you're going to work with a group of 25-year-old former college athletes, that's very different than the 40, 45-year-old mom or dad that has, you know, 2 young kids, 3 young kids in high stress jobs. So regardless, though, you got to take the time to learn a little bit more about them before saying, hey, yeah, go ahead and do this exercise or do this exercise.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, the big difference in and especially the older, you know, your population, is the big difference between, let's say, a room full of people in your class, an adult fitness class, versus when I walk into a high school weight room. That high school weight room, they all have a relatively similar lifestyle and backdrop that we're working off of, right? They're all there because they go to the same school, right? They're there from the same hours from 7 to 3, and they're doing the same thing for the most part. And even within there, we have variability, right? Whereas now, fast forward 20 years, and you have everybody's got a different fingerprint in terms of what's happened physically, psychologically, physiologically to them over those 20 years and where they're at in their current state. And then everybody has a different thing that they're doing throughout the day. So you could have somebody walk into your class that was laying bricks all day, who's standing next to an accountant who is sitting hunched over a desk all day, who's sitting next to a woman who does pharmaceutical sales, who's on the road all day, right? So those are some really different dynamics you have to work within. You know, if you have a person who's a police officer, a firefighter who's working 12-hour shifts, like all those things are different dynamics that are walking in your door. Meanwhile, we got a whiteboard and everybody's doing the same thing, right? So that's one of the things where we can miss out, and that's where it kind of leads to, well, how do I adapt this? Because I can't write individualized program. That kind of takes away, that's not group fitness anymore. So the best thing we could do is have a really good algorithm of progressions and regressions. Say, look, guys, on the workout for today is going to be, let's say it's going to be, you know, deadlifts, barbell deadlifts, right? Well, you need to know, well, if that person can't deadlift, what is the regression behind that? And if they can't do that, what's the regression behind that? And if they can deadlift and they can do it really well, how far are we going to let them push? You know, so they're still getting something out of it. And that's that thing we talk about in the course, right? How do we get them to that edge of their ability? How do we make sure that they're successful and challenged? And the first part is explaining that, is that's the first conversation I have, is say, look, your goal today is to be successful, meaning that, most importantly, no one gets hurt tonight. Number 2 is that you can do everything and do it for the number of reps or the amount of time that we're asking for. But you also need to be challenged. Like, when you do this, you should feel like this is not easy. This is not a cakewalk. And so what that means is we may need to adjust the level of resistance. We may need to adjust the level of challenge in terms of the movement so we can hit that sweet spot. And you can't expect 12 complete strangers to walk in the door and have that same edge of their ability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that we can capture, more information that we can capture from that initial evaluation is understanding, hey, listen, if you do come in and you've got, you know, chronic intermittent low back pain, right? Something that comes and goes, throwing you in class right away and asking you to deadlift is just a really poor idea. And maybe you're just going to be doing some body weight hinges to the wall. Maybe you're going to be doing some bridging, or maybe you need a couple hands-on sessions to make sure that you dial your technique in before you actually go into the class. And guys, these are the honest conversations you need to have with your clients, especially if they decide to sign up with you. I can't tell you how many times people have come in, and we talk about this too. Monday morning, right? You get that client with a bad knee, a bad shoulder, a bad back. They've got so many things going on, yet they want to improve. So that is when the communication component is so important, because what you don't want them to do is to try to keep up with the client that's been there for a decade, that knows the system, that could probably teach a class on their own. And that's when you have to educate them and say, hey, listen, here's what I want you to focus on for the first week. I want you to get here 3 days. I don't want you to go and try to max out anything. I want you to just take your time, and I want you to try to stay moving for the duration of the class. If you need to rest, absolutely rest. If we put you in a metabolic conditioning circuit and you know it's not good for you, you know, we're going to put you in the bike for a little bit and maybe have you do a little bit of work on pushing a sled, and that's about it. So we can monitor those things. But you have to communicate with your clients the expectations, right? And what it's going to look like. And I always tell them, listen, it's okay if you're a little sore, you haven't been doing this for a while. But if you need something from your coach, you need to speak up, because we can't do it for you. We can't read your mind. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to be in a scenario where, 2 weeks pass by and you're like, oh yeah, my back was hurting me, but I decided to try to, deadlift, and now it's even worse. So, no, there, that's when you have to learn to deal with different personalities too, because some people are just stubborn. They're like, oh, I'll just work through the pain. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you could have someone that's like, when I felt something in my arm, I was like, well, yeah, we're doing curls. Like you should feel your muscles working, right? So we've got sort of everything in between. But again, learning how to make a system and give people progressions and regressions. And what we try to do once we get their movement screen done, we try to give them starting points. Hey, listen, these are the basic starting points for you. And you're not going to be here forever, right? If you're still deadlifting an 8 kilo kettlebell off of a 12-inch box in a month, then we've done something wrong. It has nothing to do with trying to lift heavier. It's just based off of the exposure of the exercises, you should be getting more acclimated to the overall fitness and the overall technique. Because let's be brutally honest, unless you have a specific sport or a specific goal that requires a high skill set and a high degree of something, it's just adult group training is just really, really thoughtful GPP. That's all it is general physical preparedness. You can call it HIIT, you can call it this or that, you can give it fancy names, you can put sculpt burn at the end of it. It's just GPP. That's all it is. And it's just the way that you lay it out. That is where the magic happens. And if you do things right, a good quality training program executed correctly with good program design, a lot of those things that people are dealing with, they kind of just start to go away because we're paying attention to technique, we're paying attention to load, we're paying attention to rest, and we're not programming things that are going to be too complicated and in depth.
Yeah, and to that point, one of the things that we need to understand is you got to read the room. You got to know, like, if I'm dealing with a 35 to 55-year-old population, how much barbell work do I really need to put in there, right? Unless it's a specific goal for them, or if it's like that's the theme of the class. Sometimes if you want to have a class where people want to learn that, I might segment that out. But ask the average 35 to 55-year-olds coming in your class, they really don't care, and they're actually probably intimidated by those lifts. But they just don't know. They're just going to follow the lead of the coach. So now, let's give an example of like a progression or regression to your point of the JPP is like we keep using the deadlift. So like the deadlift, let's say if our baseline is going to be, we're going to do a trap bar deadlift because it's relatively easy to learn and teach. And that's what's on the board for today. We're going to do, 3 sets of 5 of trap bar deadlift. Okay, well, the person who's now going to go and do it, they're like, well, I've never deadlifted before, or I don't know if I can even lift that bar with even just the bumper plates on there. So what do I do? Okay, well, the first regression down, let's go. As Mike said, let's put you, maybe off of a step if you have a mobility limitation, or just put you with a single arm kettlebell deadlift. Why single arm? Because I could put that other hand behind your back so you can monitor the arch of your back so you learn how to hinge and start to load that. And we can have you go light 5 and 5. On each side. And well, what if that's too much? Well, then we can regress it down. If we're going to teach a hinging, let's just regress it down the neurodevelopmental sequence and just have you do some bridging, right? And can you learn how to access hip extension and get back into hinging there? Well, all right, well, let's fast forward. What if the person says, well, trap bar deadlifts, I need something more challenging? Well, there's the easy one that most people go to is just put more weight on the bar. But does that serve their goal, right? Is there a point where it's, okay, that's not going to get them better? Do I maybe, if they want to be explosive, maybe this person's a weekend warrior who plays in a basketball league on the weekends. Maybe a trap bar deadlift jump might actually be something worth doing. Or maybe I go now progress that hinge into a kettlebell swing. So now we have a continuum now that kind of goes on both ends of the spectrum from a movement standpoint. Now, going to programming, and guys, the genesis of this is that, like, this has become the thing, right? Is that if there's the fastest growing segment in our industry, it's adult group fitness, it's the Max Challenge, it's CrossFit, it's Orange Theory, it's all these things. And where there's some things that's been done right. CrossFit brought to us an element of making you do something for exercise other than 3 sets of 10 on a row of fixed machines and then go on a mindless machine with a TV on and with blinking lights, you know, and go to steady pace. Like that's what fitness was pre-CrossFit. They brought in calisthenics and weightlifting and these kind of things. That is a very necessary part that we needed. The other thing they brought in that was really good was a sense of community, right? And that was really, really important. But a lot of people got intimidated by CrossFit, and some rightfully so. So then there was the offshoots of, hey, if I give you F45 or one of these things, it's a little less intimidating CrossFit. But at the end of the day, it's really, we're going to pick a bunch of random exercises that are going to make you, you know, out of breath and sweat. There's not really a lot of rhyme or reason what we put in there, why we put it in there, reps, sets, tempo, all that. It's usually just, we're going to start a timer and go as hard as you can, beep, rest, go to the next station, beep, and they'll call it Tabata, which it's really not, right? They'll call it HIIT, which it's really not. And when I say not, I'm being the you know, semantics, exercise, science, you know, jerk right now, but you're not doing those things, right? And then when all else fails, just do a lot of burpees, right? And then we're going to put a finisher at the end, as if you needed that. We're going to put a finisher that's just going to take whatever you have left and just completely crush you. And there's not a lot of good structure to it. So kind of walk me through the structure of what a class looks like, a skill of strength. That's beyond just, I'm just picking random exercise, throw them on a board and assign random time or reps to it.
Yeah, I can. That's something I can easily do because I've been doing it for a decade. So, and we posted on this earlier, guys. So if you go back to our Principles of Program Design page on Instagram, I actually mapped it out how we design our warm up, and I basically I called it the 2-4-4 movement prep, and it's really, really simple. We know that most adults, not all, but remember, it's an adult group training class. We can't customize everything. Most adults need more mobility than stability, right? That's just kind of how it is. So within that 2-4-4 movement prep, we've got 2 ankle exercises. You pick the 2 that you know how to teach the best, and you find that are going to be the most impactful for your clients or your athletes. Then from there, 4 exercises focused on the hips. And now this is the other thing I really didn't get to go in the other day. Depending on what you're programming in for your work, you may want to bias it towards something else. Like for example, if you are doing if you're going to have a split squat or some sort of lunge in your training block, then you're going to want to do some exercises that are going to focus on one hip flexion, one hip and extension. It could be some half kneeling work. It could be a half kneeling hip flexor stretch couch. It could be a hands to instep stretch with a rib pull. But anyways, you're going to do those, 4 hip biased exercises. And then when it comes to the upper body, we're going to do 4 of those as well. And I always suggest doing something for the T-spine, and then something that's going to allow the T-spine to rotate, and something that's going to allow the T-spine to extend. And then lastly, we focus on the gluteal joint. So you've got 10 exercises that cover a lot of bases, and they tend to get the job done. So let's talk about our first training block. And we did a video about this as well. What we program is we program 3 exercises within each training block. And depending on the classes that we have, we may end up going through this 3 times or 4 times. So one of the things that I talked about in one of our earlier videos that we put out is you're going to pick one exercise that is going to be a little bit more technical than the others. Why? Well, simply you can't just make everything so easy that it's mindless. So let's say a deadlift. We know that a deadlift is going to be fairly technical, and most of the individuals that are going to be deadlifting, if they haven't been exposed to deadlifting, that's where they're going to need a little bit of help. So if you're running the class, you want to make sure that your eyes and your sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Your attention is going to be more biased towards the deadlift, because we know that that is the exercise where people are going to need the most amount of coaching. And then your other 2, so we've got a lower body hinge, and then we've got some sort of upper body. I don't care if you do an upper body push or pull, it doesn't matter to me, but pick something that is going to be a little bit easier. And the example that I used was an inverted row. Even if someone does an inverted row with a TRX strong, they're not going to get hurt. I've never seen anybody, get to a point where they absolutely destroy themselves because they're doing an inverted row wrong, right? And then lastly, the example that we used was a quadruped plank or a bear plank, where they're in the quadruped position and they just hover their knees. So what we're getting there is in our A block, we're getting a lower body hinge dominant movement, an upper body pull, and then a core. And then in my next block, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to add in different patterns. I may go split squat, and then I might go upper body push, and then, or upper body could be a push-up, or it could be a floor press, right? So now we have the opportunity to do the same thing again, but make sure you know what exercise is going to be a little bit more technical, because that's where you're going to program it. And it doesn't always work in that order. It's not like you have the magical one exercise that is super important, and then the next that is a little bit less important, and then the third that is a little bit less important. It doesn't work that way. But again, as long as you're covering your bases, and from a teaching standpoint, you do not want to lay it out in a way that it's so technical and so complicated that you're just running around and trying to fix everybody, because it's this thing that they should be doing. Like, you'll never see us programming in a regular class Olympic lifts. We don't even use Olympic lifts in the gym, really, because it's because of time. So you have to there's a lot more thought that goes on to it. Everybody thinks it's just about, well, let's just do this, let's do this, let's do this. It's like, nah. If you understand program design and you understand what that's going to look like, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. And the way that we program it, I'm always thinking about better ways to get people to move better or give people better cues. But start simple. And I'm going to be honest with you, a simple program coached well is going to be the most impactful thing that you can do for your clients. Coach them up. Make sure that they're nailing it. And I always tell my coaches, listen, I don't care if they're doing a push-up, cool. As long as the push-up is appropriate for them where they are at on that day. If they're going to do floor push-ups, cool. But I don't want to see, the floor push-ups with the head dipping down and the butt in the air, or I don't want to see the back sagging down. And because listen, people want to do regular push-ups, right? But are you doing them a favor if they're doing push-ups and it looks like total crap and you're just letting them do it? Are you doing them a favor? No, you're not doing them a favor. Actually, you're doing them a disservice by not coaching them into a better position. So there's a lot that goes into it. So again, to kind of recap, you get your A block, you pick those sort of 3, 4, 2 exercises, whatever works for your business and how you do things. And the same thing goes for your second block. And then as far as metabolic conditioning goes, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do that.
Now, something that people really don't think about, and we just added to the live course, is the consideration of how your facility is set up and what your surroundings are, right? Because that's a big impact in terms of how you're going to program your workout. So let's say a couple things. Let's say you're going to put together your block of an A, B, and C, but A is on this side of the gym and C is on this side of the gym, and they have to run through all the other groups to get to that. It's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a traffic jam, and that's going to be a problem. Or let's say you have back-to-back classes. You have a 6 o'clock and you have a 7:15. Well, if you have your area where people foam roll and do, kind of get loose before a class set up next to your Echo bikes, right? And the person's trying to foam roll and they got wind whipping in their face from the Echo bike and people sweating, like that's not going to match up either. And so I know, Skill Strength, if you haven't seen it, is unbelievably set up. We show, pictures, and I'm sure you can check it out online, but that's something that people don't consider. Alan Cosgrove talks about it, and he has his facility set up in like this horseshoe type shape that you start in your warm-up area, and it's built to progress you through the course of a workout. And so that needs to be considered in terms of your layout, in terms of what are you going to do, in terms of, hey, I'm going to go and I program 3 dumbbell exercises together, right? But now I got six people in a group who all need the 20-pound dumbbells. How's that going to work, right? So that's stuff that you have to factor in as well. Now, the shifting gears a little bit, one of the discussions that we had, because we were building this course as COVID was happening, right? And seeing where is the industry going to land, and we saw what was not working and what places unfortunately closed, and we saw the places like your place that was like turning people away. And I think the one common denominator is you have a tremendous community up there. Like, you have a very supportive, and it's a place, I'm blanking out his name. The guy who started Starbucks talked about when he built Starbucks, he wanted to build a third space, right? You have home, you have your office, your third space, and for a lot of people, they don't go to an office anymore. So the gym is that third space, and so to create that community. Now, I think the more engaging you can get people to do, if you can get creative and do partner drills, right? Any kind of partner drills are going to be really helpful in terms of getting people engaged with each other. So instead of having them, a simple example, if you're going to have them do a med ball slam, and they're facing a wall and just bouncing it off the wall, have two people face each other and slam and go back and forth and have them compete a little bit, right? That's what gets it fun. And if you can find some safe, non-threatening things they can compete at, where, hey, let's say at the end we're doing some metabolic work and we're going to do jump rope. Say, all right, we're going to hit the clock. We're going to do, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. But here's what we're going to do. You're going to count how many times you get touches, how many times you touch the floor, without losing the rope in that. And all right, time. Who got I got 50. I got 51. I got 52. All right, now I'm going to compete a little bit. Now you got a little bit of juices going, and that makes it fun, right? Because we need to take into consideration that this group, the adult population, the vast majority of them are not us as fitness professionals that geek out and get excited about training. They're there because they have to. They're there because they want to look good. They're there because this is a vehicle for something else. They're not excited so much about the exercises themselves. So we need to make it fun. We need to make it competitive. So I think that's something that we need to consider as well. They're not there for us and our magical exercise, prescription.
Yeah. And when it comes to community, here's a few sort of things that I've noticed after, running our gym for a decade. You can't force community. You just can't force it. It's going to happen organically in an authentic fashion. And usually community develops when it starts with the coaching staff and it starts with the owners, and it starts with showing people that you just care, that you care about them and you care about their well-being and their progress. And caring is contagious, right? And I think that's one of the amazing things that I've learned through our gym is it's so cool to see those individuals that may have not met otherwise starting to get together outside of the gym, right? And starting to learn more about one another's family or this and that. And but it starts with just caring and wanting people to have a positive experience and become a better version of themselves. And guys, a lot of people think that the community is just about like going out on a Friday night with your gym members and drinking a bunch of beers at a local bar and being like, yeah, we are this. It's like, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not necessarily community. That's fun. And I'm not saying that they can't sort of live in the same space, but a true community, if you think about what that truly means, it's surrounding yourself with individuals that care about you, but also you care about them, but you're all in it collectively to help one another out, hopefully with minimal judgment and stuff like that. And we knew early on that community was important, but we didn't try to build a community. The community happened through developing relationships and taking care of people and looking out for one another. And then it just starts to happen. And that's the beauty of it, because if you try to force it, it doesn't work that way. So, and it's going to take time as well, but it does make a significant difference. And I tell you what, this last year when I was dealing with my cancer diagnosis and everything, talk about community. I mean, my gym stepped up and they did so much for us in an overwhelming fashion. And we just did a fundraiser. We raised over $14,000 in the course of a day. I mean, that's absolutely bananas. So that goes to show you, like, a true community is going to stick by you through thick and thin. And we saw that with COVID. So many people stuck around. A large portion of our members stuck around and supported us because they knew that, hey, listen, it's going to be tough. And if we want that gym to be here at the end of this thing, which we're still not at the end of COVID, which is absolutely bananas to me, but you got to support each other. And that's the beauty of it. And we've met some amazing individuals through this, obviously in the last couple of years, but through the last 10 years, they've become friends. And it's pretty cool because you just start to see the support of one another. And, we've got some just certain people pop into my head and I'm like, man, these people are just, they are our true sort of OG SOS people that just, they get it. And that's the cool part.
Now, as much as all of that is just absolutely amazing, at the end of the day, if Mike Perry's not delivering results, they can meet friends elsewhere, right? So we have to have some tangible way that they can quantify results. And so in terms of gauging progress, right, we have to have some metrics for them, right? They're not coming in just for the workout. They're not just coming in for exercise, because the reality is there's free workouts on YouTube and Instagram and so forth. I don't know, why do I need to go and just get a workout? is that there needs to be some sort of measurables that I can work off of. And whether it's as simple as to say, hey, wow, I never could do that single leg box squat before. I would just crash onto the box and I couldn't get back up, and now I can. And that's, tying into community. That's inspiration for the next person when they're in the group together and they say, yeah, I couldn't do those when I first started, but I'm getting, now it's gotten easier as I go. But having some sort of metrics that you can go by is really important. So making sure that you have some scalability in terms of what is it that you're looking for, and what are we asking for measurables. And it's a little bit tougher, obviously, in a group setting than when you have one-on-one. If it's personal training, well, I have one-on-one clients. I can retest certain factors every single day, where it's a little less manageable when you have 12, 15 in a group. So tell me a little bit about how you implement some kind of retesting or progress measuring within the group setting up there.
So we have tracking sheets. So we program a month at a time, and I write all the programs right now. And each month actually goes into the next month. A lot of the times I'm not programming 1 month at a time. I'm programming 2 to 3 months at a time, but I'm delivering it 1 month at a time, if that makes sense. So, if I'm very, very simple linear stuff, 1 month you're doing sets of 8, another month you might be doing sets of 6, and another month you might be. So we encourage everybody to track. And I tell people, because some people won't track, they just won't. And that's okay. But they're adults. I'm not going to tell them what to do. And I kind of joke with them, listen, I can't force you to do anything, but you're going to forget. You're going to forget your weights. You're going to forget the exercises. So we encourage everybody to track and write down their weights so they know how it went. And I think also, too, what it does is just the art of not so much the art, but the idea of writing things down, and you'll actually hear a lot of people when they talk about like studying, like the art of writing things down is something that helps cement it into the brain. But we find that when people start to track their workouts and they just start to keep going, they come in and they see what they did last week and they're like, well, what should I do? And let's start where you were last week. And if it's feeling good, maybe we can bump you up, or if it isn't, it isn't. So I think there's all these little ways that you can sort of measure progress, and it's not always in this linear fashion. It's not always this sort of, 45-degree, sort of graph of progress. But I think for a lot of people too, what progress is? Maybe it's going from 2 days a week to 3 days a week. And that's their progress, right? So success is going to look different for everybody. And that's one of the things we talk in the course. And we talk about, how do you know that you're achieving your goals? And there are metric-based things like tracking your workouts or, all the physiological things. But the other stuff that, we talk about is, maybe it's feeling more energy by the end of the day, or maybe it's fitting into an old pair of jeans, or et cetera. But there are different ways to track it, but you have to know where you're starting. And once you know at that starting point, then you can start to make that progress forward. And it's going to take some effort and it's going to take time, but if you're consistent, pretty cool things will happen.
Now, you mentioned, okay, someone comes 2 days a week versus 3 days a week, and that can be a success story. Well, the reality is that, if you have that person that comes once or twice a week, and if they're coming 3 times a week, as much as is the mistake that we make as trainers and coaches, we like to think the world revolves around us, right? And that our clients do nothing but think about us 24/7, is that we need to have some education built into our sessions. We need to educate on what's happening the other 23 hours of your day. What's happening on the other days that you're not here is really important. So if you're not using that as a window, as a platform to educate, to explain, to talk to people about, hey, and just have where it's a minute of your, at the beginning of class or at the end is perfect because you have a cool down time, right? That cool down time is maybe people are going to be working on some breathing, or they're doing some kind of mobility work just to kind of reset their nervous system, and say during that time, hey, each day I'm going to give them a little lesson. And so that lesson may be, hey guys, just, I don't know how much you pay attention to your sleep, but here's some things that you should know about your sleep and why it's important. And here's a few things that we found that is helpful with your sleep. Or here's why you need to be, make sure you need to be mindful of how much protein you're getting in a day. How much should you take in? Here's the general guidelines, and here's what you should look for. And just if you could have something you can use as an education, because then you're not just a workout, you're a resource. And hopefully that sparks more thought. And then even with the in terms of whether their activity is the rest of the week, say, hey guys, we hit, you know, we in that you know, finisher we did do, you know, you guys are on the bikes, you guys all probably came close to your max heart rate. So you've checked that box for the week, right? We don't really need to go do a lot more of that, but what you could probably benefit from that's not really suitable for this room is to go do maybe some zone 2 work. What does that mean? That means you're going to go out, go for a brisk walk, or you know, maybe a bike ride or something like that, where you can still hold the conversation, but you want to get some of that in a couple times this week, and get people to manage. So this is not just an isolated thing where the only time I'm really thinking about making myself a better version of me is that 1 hour from when I walk in your door to when I leave, and then I forget about it the rest of the time. Because if we really want to deliver results, that's the only way it's going to happen holistically, is to say, okay, listen, hey, we just did this. Here's some things you need to know about right after the workout. Here's some things you need to know about coming up on Wednesday's workout, so you're prepared. So if you're someone that plays in a competitive tennis league, something you want to consider, or if you have you know, we're going to get after it pretty hard on Wednesday. If you have a big golf outing on Thursday, we might need to adjust. Let us know. We need to adjust that, right? So those kind of things, are having those making it educational is really where you deliver your value.
Absolutely. And I've said this a few times. I probably made like an infographic a few years ago, but, you know, fitness is not just a physiological and a physical experience. It should be an educational experience. And I always tell people, listen, if you spend any amount of time at my gym, and if you spend 6 months at my gym and you decide, hey, I'm going to try something else, cool, not a problem. I get it. Things happen. If you paid attention, you should know how to foam roll. By the end of that, you should know how to, you know, use a roller. You should know how to warm up. You should know how to, the basics of what exercises go well together, how to execute them safely. And you should be able to kind of make your way around the weight room, right? And it's all about that education. It's all about teaching people to, giving them the insight in the education that they can start to do this on their own. And here's the cool thing, right? People think, oh, you don't want people to do it on their own, and then they won't work with you because they're going to do it on their own. That's a really bad mindset. That's a scarcity mindset, thinking they're not going to be able to stick around. Because here's the thing, yes, they're learning, and they're learning from you, but as a coach, you should be learning as well. So you should always be ahead of them. If both of you are progressing, you should always be ahead of them, and you should have the ability to help them out even more and more and more, right? Because you don't want to stop your progress as a coach, and they don't want to stop their progress. So don't worry about like giving them so much information that they don't need you. I've never had that happen to me, where someone's like, I have it made and I know. Because some people will come to me and just be like, you know, Mike, what about this, or what about this? And they'll use me as a resource from an educational standpoint, because they go, well, Mike, I read 4 books on squatting and they all say the different thing. They all say different things. And I'm like, okay, so what do you want to do? I want to learn how to back squat. Should I do high bar? No, you actually shouldn't do a high bar back squat, because based off of the way that you move and based off of your makeup, your anthropometry, back squatting is a really damn bad idea. Right? It's not going to go, a high bar is maybe a bad idea for you, and maybe a low bar is better. So you want to get to the point where you become a resource that you are Google to them. You want to be Google to your clients. Okay? They should trust you to the point where they're going to ask you everything about the human body when it comes to exercise. If they're going to Google, it's probably not great, right? You're probably missing something. So get to the point where you become a greater resource than a search engine.
Yeah, it's funny. It just made me think of a story. One of the best compliments I ever got was one of my, it was actually not an active client. It was one of my clients was working out at a big box gym just on their own. And one of my other clients was there, and they didn't know each other. And they just walked up to him, like, you know, somewhat awkwardly, but walked up to him blindly and said, so how long have you been training with Eric? And she's like, how do you know that? That's weird. She's like, because I could just tell by the way you perform a workout that there's only one way you know how to do that, because everybody in here is a train wreck, but you actually look like you know what you're doing. And so that's one of the best compliments I can get, that I put this person out into the world, and you can see when it's done right? It looks like it's supposed to be happening, right? And it's not torturous. So lots of ground covered. So a couple housekeeping notes to kind of go through. We are doing one of these next week. Next week, we're going to talk about meeting the minimums. It's going to be an interesting thing, because there's certain things that you should be able to do as a minimum before we let you do something else. Like we have certain minimums you should be able to hit for movement. You have certain minimums you should be able to hit. Like I have a whole progression that we're gonna have a post on next week of, before I let you do a chin up, here's 2 boxes you got to check first, right? And so we'll talk about minimums and certain things we need to hit, and that's how we put together our checklist and so forth in our course. Another interesting thing about next week is it's going to be the last one, possibly last Instagram Live, because the following week is Memorial Day weekend. We know no one's going to be tuning into us on a Friday afternoon, and then the summer kind of starts kicking off. So what we're transitioning to is the wheels are in motion, where the Principles of Performance podcast is going to be going and getting ready to launch. And so it's going to basically be the reincarnation of what we've been doing on Fridays for the last couple of months. And we've had a lot of really awesome feedback and people saying, you know, I love it and I wish I could get more of it, but I can't get to you on a Friday at 1 o'clock, or I don't have Instagram, or it's really inaccessible and I can't listen to it in my car, or that kind of stuff. So the easiest way is, well, everybody else has a podcast. Why don't we? Speaking of everybody has a podcast, they even let you and Jones put together a podcast.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. Speaking of minimums.
So during COVID, like every other coach out there, was going bananas and looking for other stuff to do. And it originally started with me and my buddy Devin McConnell, who's an amazing strength coach. He was out of UMass Lowell, and when we met, he was actually working with the Devils, and now he's with Coyotes. But it started us with just kind of talking shop about training, and then sort of things happened, and I ran with it for a little bit and did it on my own. And then with Brett's a good friend of mine, and we've always wanted to collaborate on something. He called me one day. He's like, "You ever think about having a co-host?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "What? Why? Do you know someone?" He's like, "Me." I was like, "Let's do it." So Brett and I have about 15 episodes that have been recorded. We're going to be launching them every week. It's called the Minimum Effective Dose. You can find that in all the platforms. The one that most people go to is iTunes, but it's on pretty much everything out there. So check it out. We've got a lot of great information on that. And it looks like I'm going to have like 2 podcasts going, because, between that and Eric's going to be really kind of taking the lead on the Principles of Performance one. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to try to cover a boatload of topics. And if there's anything specifically that you want to cover, hey, if you want to join us, if you're like, hey, I've got some questions, or I've got some ideas, or hey, maybe you see things a little bit differently, or you work with specific populations, we'd love to chat with you, because listen, we can always learn from someone. So Minimum Effective Dose podcast. Stay tuned for the up and coming podcast that Eric's going to be launching very, very soon, along with myself, of course. And we're going to keep up putting out content, and we are in the process of having another live course, and we haven't solidified the date, but we know the location. We're going to be doing this at Perform Better down at the headquarters down in late summer, early fall. So we're really excited to do that as well. And if you have any questions about other things that we do, we actually have a few other gyms that we're working with and consulting with to help them with their designing and educating their staff and their team. And that's something that we do as well. So if that's something you're potentially interested in, shoot us a message. And you can also shoot us an email at principlesofprogramdesign@gmail.com. So anything else you want to add, Eric?
We also have our online courses up and rolling, which we have a free preview for. If you just go to principlesofprogramdesign.com, you can get a free 20-minute kind of snapshot of all the stuff we cover in the online course, which is a full 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. So pay attention, guys. Go ahead and follow us, and principlesofprogramdesign.com as well. And if you guys have any other topics, anything you want us to cover, please shoot us a message, and we'll go from there. So appreciate you all tuning in, and we're going to repost this here in a second, and we'll talk to you guys soon.